Hello and welcome to Midlands Business Update, the show which looks at the stories and the people behind some of the region's most dynamic businesses. Now, if you're a follower of West Midlands football, my guest this week will need a little introduction. Until a certain man called Steve Bull came along, he was the record goal scorer at Wolverhampton Wanderers Football Club. These days, he's still involved in the local sporting scene thanks to his role as operations director at an award-winning company called Pitch Caren. John Richards, welcome to Big Centre Television.
Thank you, Carl.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
We'll get to the Pitch Caren because it's quite strange, isn't it, the way you've come full circle. You started your life in the West Midlands on the grass.
That's right, kicking it up, and now I'm looking after it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's quite a contrast, yeah.
You know, you're not a West Midlands boy, born and bred, are you? So
No.
how did you end up coming down here in the
I'm
first
actually
place?
from Warrington, originally, and it was just a case of through the football, I was playing for Lancashire Grammar Schoolboys team, and we were on a tournament down at Bognor Regis. And it was all the counties that were meeting up there and they selected the England Grammar School Boys team. And there was a scout there from Wolves who was with the Staffordshire team. And he approached me and said, are you signed up with any club? And I wasn't at those days, which was quite unusual because I was 18, nearly 19. And he said, we'd like to come have a little run out at Wolves. So after the tournament, a guy called Joe Gardner, who was the Wolves chief scout, and he used to work with Stan Cullis, came to see me and brought me down to Wolves. I had a little bit of a trial match, which was the last game of the reserve game of the 1969 season against Derby County, and they offered me a one-year contract. So I came down, not really expecting, it was a great opportunity, but you know, not really expecting it to go much further than the 1 year.
And of course, almost unheard of these days in footballing circles. I mean, you essentially were a one-club man really through your career, weren't you, pretty much? That's
right. I stayed at Wolves till 1983. I had a little spell with Derby County, which was very enjoyable because that was with Peter Taylor. And then I had finished my career off in Portugal. Played 2 years in Portugal on the island of Madeira. Fantastic time we had there. And that was it. I finished then in 1985.
So then working your way back from 1985 backwards, at some point presumably a professional footballer has to start thinking, right, I need to put a plan in place for life after football. What stage had you started thinking about, right, what shall I do next?
Probably about 7 or 8 years before I finished. I was at the grammar school. My plan was to go to teacher training college to become a teacher, but obviously the Wolves opportunity came in. And as I'd only got 1 year's contract, I stayed on at Wolverhampton. The first year, I actually went to the Wolfram College in Wolverhampton to do cost and works accountancy. But then I let that go because I was then offered a longer-term contract with Wolves, and obviously my career developed from there. But about 7 or 8 years into my career, you know, you then start thinking, it's not going to last forever. And I actually came to Wednesbury, to the college there, and did a leisure management course, which actually stood me in good stead for what I did immediately after I finished football, because it was never my intention to stay in football. It really didn't appeal to me from the coach and the management side. I was always going to do something else outside of football. Why
was that? Was there a particular reason why you didn't suit you?
I don't know, Carl. I think it's something that either appeals to you or it doesn't. And there was a lot of players, a lot of good players who were natural coaches, and you could see them. There was a difference. I wasn't a natural coach. I was quite happy just to play, and then to look elsewhere for other opportunities. I was doing quite a lot of work actually with the Express and Star and the local radio, doing a little bit on there and doing a bit of writing for the Express and Star. I was quite interested in doing that and going into the journalism side, but. What actually happened, there was an opportunity at Wolverhampton Council, and I applied for a position there as sport and recreation manager in a newly formed leisure services department. So
that was the sort of mid-1980s by then, was that?
Yeah, that was 1986. It was actually January 1986, and it was, I fortunately got the position. It was a brand new position because it was just when they formed a leisure services department, and obviously it stood me in good stead, the fact I'd done the leisure management course as well.
So it had obviously been something, that job was almost tailor-made. You'd been in the back of your mind probably from the time you went to Wednesbury then?
That's right. Not exactly knowing what was involved, working for a local authority as well, and actually doing what people would class as a proper job as opposed to playing football. And it really was an eye-opener. and I learnt so much there. I know people, tend to criticise local authorities, but they have to be very thorough. They have to make sure that things are done properly, and it taught me such a great deal working with some great managers and learning how to actually prepare reports and think them through thoroughly. Because if you hadn't done your report thoroughly, it didn't get through. The councillors were very sharp to make sure that...
well, you're completely accountable, aren't you, for everything
very
you do?
Much so,
yeah. So what was your brief then with that job?
Well, it was the new head of leisure services was a gentleman called Ralph Smith, lovely man. Still lives in Wolverhampton, not far from me, and fantastic manager. Not a heavy-handed, guided you and sort of led by example. My brief was really overseeing all the sports and recreation facilities in Wolverhampton, which included strange things at that time like swimming pools. I've got no experience of swimming pools. Obviously, the Aldersley Stadium, that was more akin to what I'd been used to with it on the football side. So it really gave me a wider sort of knowledge of sporting facilities and even community. There was a community sports team, which actually was a group that worked in all of the sort of disadvantaged areas of Wolverhampton, which set up sort of all sorts of sporting events to get the kids involved, to get the youths involved, and that was very successful. And again, it taught me a great deal because I was there for 6 years about working with the local community.
Did your profile as a star, a celeb, a Wolverhampton Wanderers, big name, sort of help open doors or allow you to maybe do things that perhaps other people might not have been able to do with that job?
Yes, it helped me. It helped me a great deal to start off with, but especially with the staff, the people, they were very helpful. They wanted me to succeed. But after a while, you really have to do the business. And it probably took me 12, 18 months before I actually felt comfortable and knowledgeable enough to be able to start managing the teams properly. But as I said previously, fantastic experience, and really I think set me up for what I'm doing now.
But of course it wasn't long after that time at the council that you ended up finding yourself back at Wolverhampton Wanderers, was it?
Yeah, because from Wolverhampton I went to Cannock Chase for, that was for 5 years, and then I was given the opportunity to join Wolves as a director. Sadly, following the death of Billy Wright, Sir Jack asked me to come on board, which I did, and again, fantastic experience, seeing how a football club worked from behind the scenes.
How much had it changed by the time you got there then to how it was when you left it as a player?
Oh, totally. It really was. It was massive. It was just before the influx of all the money, but the money was actually growing. There was a lot of big money players there. It was just in that sort of in between time where where players now are actually far ahead from a salary point of view than the general public. You've got people like Stevie Bull there, who was still very much a local hero and still is, and it's still got the association with the fans. I think the players have lost that to a certain extent now because of the nature of the beast, which is football and the money that's involved. So it was a lovely time, and then for whatever reason, because the club was growing, Sir Jack decided we needed to look for a managing director. So we did quite a lot of interviews, and I was involved on the interview panel with Sir Jack. And after about 4 or 5 months of being unsuccessful, he just turned around to me after one interview and said, "Why don't you do it?"
How did you feel when he said that to you?
Very strange, because it was a big step and totally away from what I've been used to. But if someone like Sir Jack feels he's got the faith in you and the confidence in you to do the job, it was worth having a go.
And did that job pan out to be what you thought it would be?
No, totally different. Really strange from the way that it was operated. Some great people there, there's no doubt about it. But in the end, it's almost like it's operated the other way around. The players and the agents, were tending to call the shots. It wasn't really managed or operated from the top. It was actually, the players who actually ran the club, and to a certain extent their agents. So you're actually operating in a totally different environment, whereas normally it's from the top down. All right, you work as a team, but the instructions and the directions come, and then you've got the involvement from the fans, the pressure from the fans, and then obviously Sir Jack himself, who owned the club, and he wanted his involvement as well. So you've got a strange sort of pull from different directions, and it was a good experience from my point of view. I don't think it was the most enjoyable time of my life.
But it set you up brilliantly for what you ended up
exactly.
going on to do in business in the future, which we'll talk a little bit more about that after the break.
Okay.
And find out what you're up to now. John Richards, thank you for that. Join us after the break for more chat. Welcome back to Midlands Business Update. My guest this week is former Wolverhampton Wanderers star John Richards, who is now Operations Director at award-winning West Midlands company Maxwell Amenity and the company Pitch Caren, which is part of that. John, we talked before the break about really what got you into business.
Yes.
and your career following football from the local authorities, back to Wolverhampton Wanderers in a managing director's role, which I guess was quite strange at a time where things were really changing. At what time were you thinking about your exit plan from that job into what you're doing now?
There wasn't any thought. It was just, it happened. The circumstances at Wolves weren't working out. I left the club in 2000 and basically I hadn't got any plan. But I'd got a little bit of time to sort of think about what I wanted to do. I did a little bit of work with the local radio, a little bit of work with the local newspaper, the Express and Star, and it was then an opportunity that came up out of the blue through a contact at Wolverhampton Wanderers, Richard Skirrow, the club secretary, who put in touch with me the head groundsman, a guy called Dave Saltman. And obviously knew Dave because he was the head groundsman while I was there. And Dave was a young, top groundsman, one of the most highly regarded groundsmen in the country, and still is, and he was in his early 30s. But he'd got this driving ambition, he'd got this idea to set up a website for groundsmen, which then developed into greenkeepers as well. But initially it was just for groundsmen. He's got a lot of his groundsman pals from all the different sports around the country supporting him. He'd got a lot of backing. He'd got this idea and he wanted to go with it and give it a go. And he just said, would I come on board with him to help him with regards to starting the company, give him a little bit of support on the admin side, things like that, the finance, the legal side, and whilst he was doing what I would consider the key work, driving the business, getting it going.
Had you got much of an idea at that point, sort of what shape the business would take then?
It was going to be a website. It was always going to be a website, a news information resource, one which would help groundsmen improve their standing. Because groundsmen are always considered to be, they just cut grass. Well, they don't, and we'll come on to that. They do a lot more than that. The soil science is fantastic, and when you look at the services nowadays. But that's what Dave wanted to do. He really wanted to, and he was the first. He was a pioneer to actually create this sort of website for the industry, and it took 1 or 2 years to take off. There was Dave, myself, and a website developer based in Wolverhampton Science Park in a little office. And that was it. And really it was a case of trying to get the industry to embrace us, use modern technology, log on, use the internet. David, as I said, we've got all his contacts with groundsmen at all the top clubs, in all the different sports, and they were getting involved, and some of the big companies as well were supporting it. And it probably took 2 or 3 years before it got enough momentum to actually start generating national interest, where people were saying, what's all this about? There were companies coming on board, starting advertising. We were expanding the staff. We could now get sales staff, advertising staff, marketing. We set up a magazine, because it was a natural progression for us, because we were creating stories to go onto the website. And it just developed from there. Because
it was essentially a company sharing best practice and sharing tips, advice, and
That's
ideas,
right.
wasn't
Yeah,
it? So
it's for sports professionals, but it then became for domestics as well, who wanted to get the lawns and the grounds as best they can. But really, that's what it was. It was sharing best practice. People could go on there and ask for advice. They could see what problems they were having at St Andrews, for example, and you'd have another greenkeeper at another club said, I've had a similar problem, you know, and sharing the knowledge and passing on the information. It's a strange industry because, unlike a lot of industries which tend to keep all the knowledge and information close to the chest, they don't. Yeah. The groundsman greenkeepers don't. They are helping each other all the time, and that's what is different about it. And it's just grown from there, Carl.
And,
you know.
And you were presumably you set this business up almost at the time when the science of pitch care and greenkeeping and how to make the perfect playing surface was going through the roof as well, wasn't it? People were talking about it more anyway. So
that's right, and you know, it was growth from a television point of view. Everything was high profile. You know, the Premier League was there. The pitches were under the microscope. The greenkeepers were. They saw the golf courses over in America, and people wanted to play on similar sort of things. So it actually was the right time, you know. But it showed that, and something that we've always considered, that the greenkeepers and the groundsmen in the UK are regarded as being the best in the world. You know, you look around nowadays, and there's a lot of our groundsmen and greenkeepers in other parts of the world at some of the top venues, and we do remarkably well, despite very difficult conditions, weather-wise in particular. We produce some of the best sports surfaces in the world.
Isn't that possibly why we've got some of the best groundsmen, because they have to overcome some of the most terrible
challenges?
Yeah,
they're challenged all the time, and you know what we've been trying to do all the time is to champion them, the work that they do, because they do get a lot of criticism, and people sadly without the knowledge tend to be the first ones to criticise a pitch or a cricket square or something like that, as happened last week at one of the Ashes games when you know, they were quick to criticise, but it played really well and it was a cracking result, wasn't it? Absolutely. So it's actually trying to get that over, you know, and getting the knowledge to the general public as well.
So bringing us up to the present day, the company's now, the parent company's called Maxwell Amenity, and you're based just on the outskirts of Telford, aren't you? So what size business are you now then?
I would call it medium size. We've got just getting up to 80 staff. So we actually merged with a company called Amenity Land Solutions in Telford, which is why we moved to Telford, and that was about 5 or 6 years ago, to give us a broader distribution network. We hadn't got, you know, we were selling products left, right and centre, you know, we got nowhere to store them. So at least at Telford now we've got warehouse staff, we've got a contracts team, we've got a landscaping section, we've got all the professionals that you need. We've got a team on the road of reps on the road in all parts of the country. So yeah, we've actually grown rapidly in the last 18 months from 60 staff to 80, so that's a 30% increase.
And the last time we bumped into one another, you were winning an award for your support of Apprenticeship Scheme, so you're obviously committed to growing the business through that side.
Very much so, and we decided that about 4 or 5 years ago, Carl, when we'd settled down after the merger, and it was a case of, well, we worked with a local training and development company, Matrix, and we got our first apprentice, Jack, in the warehouse, and since then we've had 11. And 7 of them have gone on to work full-time for us in all the different departments, accounts, sales, IT, and we've got another 4 apprentices going through their work now as we speak, and we'll be getting more. I've been very impressed with the standard of the young people.
I was going to ask you that. How easy are you finding it to recruit the sorts of people that you want in this area?
It's difficult where we are because we're semi-rural and we're not on a bus route, so the younger ones have it difficult to find us, but because of our reputation now with the way that we look after apprentices, you know, we're getting more coming to us, and as I said, you know, we will be taking on more and more apprentices as the years come. It's as simple as that.
So give us an idea of some of the sort of high-profile projects that your company's involved in around here.
Well, virtually all the top sports clubs, racecourses, Ascot, Windsor, Sunningdale, Aston Villa, Wolves, of course, Shrewsbury Town. We're actually work with a local club. We've actually taken over the maintenance there, so we'll be running their maintenance for the next 2 years at Shrewsbury Town. Wimbledon, the primary club at Edgbaston, University of Birmingham. It's everybody who's got a sports pitch. It's as simple as that, or landscape grounds. So it's estates, local authorities, and it's enjoyable. Lovely people, lovely industry, and I'm delighted with the team that we got. And Dave's heading it up. You know, he loves his work. Dave, and he's driving it. He's out there at Shrewsbury Town as we speak, looking at making sure the pitch is going to be fantastic for the start of their season. And he's good. He's good, and it's a good business, and it's nice to see that we've got a lot of the same staff that we started with,
which is always a good sign of a happy workforce, isn't it? So
yeah, and that's more than anything. It's like, if I've learned anything from sport, it's all about the team. It's not one individual within that team.
What's next for John Richards then?
John Richards is going to start winding down a little bit because John Richards has got four grandchildren, 2 in Australia, 2 in Yorkshire, and there's demands from them, and there's demands from me, to be fair, Carl, because I want to spend a little bit more time with them. I still want to keep involved. I've still got that sort of attitude. I enjoy what I do. I love the people that I work with, and I love the industry that I work in.
Do you still go and watch the Wolves or local football much?
No, not at all. I'd rather go and have a weekend with my grandchildren. The 6-year-old, he's getting into football, so it might come at some stage, Carl, that I might have to take him to a Wolves match. However, at the moment, he's a Bradford City supporter.
Just make sure the pitch is all right then up at Bradford then. You can never have a look at that and make sure.
I'll have a look at it and see if we can get it right.
John, thanks for joining us. It's been a pleasure. Much appreciated. That's all we've got time for, sadly, on Midlands Business Update this week. Remember, if you've got a story to tell, you can email us. It's business@bigcentre.tv. Otherwise, drop us a line through our Facebook page or on the website. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again soon.